Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk about fantasy creatures and important stuff to look more photoreal and stuff like this. I'm going to show you different examples and tell you about my techniques to make them more believable. So let's jump right into it, guys. Okay, so let's begin talking about the Lionel sculpt right here. The most important part when creating fantasy creatures like this with different types of like animals or animals and humans combined kinda is to start thinking about the skeleton structure. First thing I did was blocked out like in Photoshop the skeleton structure really quickly so I saw kinda what they wanted to create. Then you're gonna add muscle on top of that, and you need to work out the anatomy so the anatomy works. That's the first part that's really important to do, because you need to like figure out how you're gonna blend this part in between here, between the human and between the horse body. So you need to figure out that anatomical and skeleton base before you add skin and fat on top. So that's the most important thing. The second thing you want to be sure that you do is to like, or at least I'm hiding tricky areas. So tricky areas like around the neck, because it's like lion human face combined to a human torso. That's a little bit of a tricky part, and of course the biggest tricky part right here, the torso to the horse anatomy. That's a very tricky part. You see here this armor. I use this armor so I could hide the big flaw right here with this, like where the anatomical stuff didn't go perfectly together. It still works kinda, but I wanted to just hide it, so I got rid of it. So be sure that you hide, if you can hide this like stuff, be sure that you do that, guys. And also really important that you join some muscles, especially if they're going to be visible. Like right here, joining the lower back muscle with the trapezius muscle of the horse. So it looks more like a fluid muscle throughout this creature than two separate muscles for two separate creatures, you know. So make sure that you do that, guys. And of course, have a ton of reference, real life reference. It's super important. It's super important that you have real life reference, because if you don't, it's not gonna look based in real life or anything like that. So get a ton of reference. Like for this liner, I get a ton of lion, horse, and human anatomy and images of these three different kind of creatures. So that's really important. But that was all I had to say about Lionel. So let's get to the next creature. Okay, guys, so let's talk about this Sculptosaurus here, a fan-made dinosaur I created for a like fan-made Jurassic World movie. It's actually on my channel still, so you can go to the first video ever uploaded and watch that video. But this is a new version of that dinosaur, so the version in that movie is not super good, I would say, but it can be fun to watch, guys. So yeah. Okay, so the first thing, it's really important that you sketch out the overall proportions, so you know how the proportions are gonna look. Like a big creature like this is gonna need big legs, a pretty small torso, and a pretty, not going to have a big head but not too big. It's like in between right here. So those proportions are figured out, and then a tail that can counter all that weight from the front. So make sure that you add all of this different kind of stuff to your proportions and sketch out like in Photoshop or on paper the proportions, ideas, and then start building them, sketching them up in like sculpture form in Zbrush kinda, or Blender, or Mudbox, whatever you like to use. And be sure that you add anatomical parts in the like sketch, or trying to start think about it. So as I told you guys before with Lionel, skeleton, start with that, so then muscles, fat, and skin. So make sure that you do that, guys. I can't tell you enough how important it really is. But I already told you guys how you do that, so we're not gonna talk about that too much on this guy. And make sure that you use real life reference. Really, guys, it's so important. And for something like this, using like ostrich reference for the feet and anatomy of the legs, and then using a ton of bird anatomy for the entire body, and like crocodile reference for the overall head and for the skeleton. Be sure to use dinosaur skeleton reference. It's so important for a creature like this. And the anatomy of tail, of course, reptile tail, like crocodile tail with just reptile muscles on top. So make sure to add all that kind of stuff. This is still not a finished dinosaur. Have a long way to go, but it's starting to look pretty cool at least. But that was everything I had to tell you guys about the Sculptosaurus. So let's go on to the next creature, that's Venom. Okay guys, so let's continue with the Venom sculpture. It wasn't done at this stage, but I thought I would just show you some nice tips to make a believable character like this. First thing, we already talked about it, but it's super important with the proportions. So make sure that the proportions are in like the human proportions, like here, that you don't make the shoulders like too wide. You're still gonna make them really wide, but don't exaggerate like the skeleton base too much. You can exaggerate the muscles a ton, but keep the skeleton structure realistic. Of course you can exaggerate it a little bit. And anatomy, human anatomy, you can exaggerate every single muscle if you want, because this is like an alien. But with his head like here, really important that you actually keep it like human proportions, like skeleton, like a jaw right here, human jaw kind of shape, and then upper part here actually follows a human skull shape. Then if you actually look real close, really small indication of cheekbones, so make sure that you add that. So really just keep it in realistic anatomy. And of course it's really important to look like to real reference from real life, like a lot of big bodybuilders reference is a great reference for somebody like Venom. Yeah, and exaggerate the shapes. Use the reference and exaggerate the shapes you see. Like I have exaggerated the shoulders, the bicep, the tricep, forearm muscles a lot. So make sure that you look at your reference and exaggerate the shapes to make it look more like a fantasy creature and make it look more like creature-like and not too human. Because you don't want Venom to look like a bodybuilder with like a CG head on top, right? So you want to exaggerate all those different kind of shapes. Then I also want to talk to you guys about the scare shapes that you can really quickly add on like evil characters like Venom. Make sure that it's like more these triangular shapes, like on the side of his arm here. You can see this like 90-degree shape. Make sure that you add a ton of these shapes. Then the same here with the hand shape right here. You can see 90-degree. At the foot, 90-degree, 90-degree. Adding, and here at the toes, 90 degrees. I love this 90 degrees angle because it makes him look so much more evil. And right here, leg, 90 degrees. So make sure that you add a ton of those shapes, guys, if you want it to look more like scary and unnatural. Like a symbiote, an alien would look like. So, yeah, exaggerate those shapes. But I think that was everything I had to talk to you guys about Venom. Let's go to the last one, the Giga member. So let's do it. Okay guys, so now we're gonna tell you guys about how to take a fantasy like creature and make it more believable. So this is kind of like inverted from the other characters we have taken a look at. So this is supposed to be a sketch of a Giga clan member from the Legend of Zelda games. So I just started with a 3D scan that I have bought from the internet as a base, because this was all about the like costume. But it's very important that you start with human anatomy shapes when you want to make a like realistic sculpt like this that's supposed to be human. So I didn't want this like ginormous exaggerated shoulders that these guys has. So then it's super important that you make sure that like the clothing actually works. Like they have these masks in the game where they can't see through it and they can't breathe through it. So I added breathable stuff so it could breathe through the mask and see through the mask. That's super important because otherwise it doesn't gonna look like believable. So really make sure guys that you don't exaggerate the shapes on a character like this, but that you actually make it a little bit more believable, like I trying to do with this Giga character right here. And of course, human anatomy. Use it to your advantage. Start with your human anatomy, base shapes, and then just build on top of that. And really make sure that the overall costume fits around the human shape and not gets too exaggerated. But guys, I hope you liked this video. If you do, please smash that subscribe button, like this video and share it. If you want to vote for the next tutorial, go to the description down below. I'm going to be linking my Instagram where we actually vote for some of the tutorials that I'm gonna do on this channel. Otherwise guys, see you next time. Please subscribe. Bye bye.